Admiral Park stood at the command center of the orbital defense station, his eyes fixed on the massive holographic display. The room fell silent as the first images of the alien ships came into view. They were enormous, unlike anything humans had ever built, appearing suddenly near Saturn's rings, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "How many?" Park asked, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. 23 capital ships, sir," responded Lieutenant Lee from her station. "Each one bigger than our largest carrier. Hundreds of smaller vessels surrounding them." Park nodded slowly. Humanity had prepared for this day. Ever since the deep space telescopes had picked up unusual signals 15 years ago, Earth had quietly built up its defenses while continuing to send out peaceful messages to the stars. Now, first contact had arrived, not with a handshake, but with what looked suspiciously like a war fleet. The transmission came 3 hours later. It displayed a being with silvery skin and 6 eyes arranged in a circle around what appeared to be a speaking apparatus. The translator software worked quickly, converting the strange musical language into words everyone could understand. "People of Earth, we are the Galactic Empire, rulers of 8,000 star systems and keepers of cosmic peace for 12,000 years. We have observed your kind for decades. You develop too quickly. You think too unpredictably. You will surrender your world and join the Empire as a protected territory. Resist, and we will be forced to demonstrate our power." The United Earth. Government called an emergency session. Representatives from every nation gathered virtually as they debated how to respond. Some wanted immediate surrender. The aliens clearly possessed technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. Others demanded an immediate attack, strike first before the Empire could organize. Park was called to speak before the assembly. He stood tall, his military uniform crisp, voice clear as he addressed the world's leaders. "We've known this day might come. That's why we built the Solar Shield Network. That's why we developed the Quantum Response System. We are not defenseless, but neither should we be foolish. I recommend a diplomatic response that makes our position clear." After hours of debate, Earth sent its answer. It was President Han who delivered the message personally. "Greetings to the Galactic Empire. Earth welcomes peaceful contact with galactic civilization. We respectfully decline your offer of surrender. Earth is our home, and we will determine our own destiny. We desire peace between our peoples and propose establishing diplomatic relations." Then came the part Park had suggested. Attached to the message were detailed schematics of Earth's defensive capabilities, including the recently completed orbital platforms and the theoretical yield of their new particle weapons. "This is not a threat," President Han continued. "This is simply to avoid any misunderstandings. We hope for friendship, but we will defend our home if necessary." On board the Imperial flagship, Grand Commander Du regarded the human response with growing irritation. He had conquered 16 worlds in his lifetime, and none had dared to send such a message. He turned to his senior officers. "They show us their weapons. As if that would deter us. Primitive species always overestimate their capabilities." Only one voice spoke in caution. Science Officer Kim had spent years studying transmissions from Earth, analyzing their history, art, and conflicts. "Commander, I believe we should reconsider. These humans have progressed from atmospheric flight to rudimentary space travel in less than 1 century. Their technological advancement curve is unprecedented, and more concerning, they adapt during conflicts, they improvise. The schematics they sent show theory and application that our engineers find surprisingly innovative." Du dismissed her concerns with a wave of his upper limb. "Innovation without discipline is chaos. Their unpredictability is precisely why. They must be controlled. Prepare a disciplinary strike on their lunar settlements. A small display of our power will bring them to their senses." What Du didn't see was Kim's troubled expression as she left the command chamber. What he couldn't know was that Kim had already begun to question the Empire's approach to species like humans. And what would soon become clear was that Kim had made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. She transmitted the attack plans to Earth through a channel the Empire's security protocols hadn't detected. Back on Earth, Admiral Park received the warning just in time. "Evacuate the lunar bases immediately," he ordered. "All personnel. And power up the defense grid. It appears the Empire has made their choice." As the last transport ships left the lunar surface, Park looked out at the stars. He had hoped for peace, but prepared for war. Now it seemed humanity would have to show the Galactic Empire why underestimating Earth was the biggest mistake they could have made. Grand Marshal Du paced the gleaming floor of the Imperial flagship's war room, his six-fingered hands clasped behind his back. The holographic display of Earth rotated slowly in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the 12 members of the Imperial Council who had traveled with the fleet to witness this minor annexation firsthand. "Look at it," Du said, gesturing dismissively at the blue planet. "One dominant species. No unified planetary government until barely 50 years ago. Their first space station was built using chemical rockets." He laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. "And they send us weapon schematics, as if that would make us reconsider." Council Elder Tay, oldest among the gathered officials, leaned forward in her gravity chair. Her skin had the pale blue tint of those who had undergone life extension treatments for centuries. Yet they developed faster-than-light capability. Our predictions said they were at least 300 years from such a breakthrough. "Her fluke," Doe replied. "They stumbled upon the principles by accident. Their science is haphazard, undisciplined." The war room doors slid open, and xenopsychologist Kim entered. She carried a data tablet and wore the silver uniform of the Science Division, her rank insignia indicating her position as senior researcher on human behavior. She bowed respectfully to the Council before speaking. "Grand Marshal, Council members, I've completed my analysis of human historical conflicts. I believe we should reconsider our approach to Earth." Du's expression hardened. "Speak plainly, scientist." Kim activated her tablet, projecting images above the Earth hologram, scenes from human history, battle maps, strategic analyses. Humans have a unique response to external threats. Unlike the 17 other species we've incorporated into the Empire, humans become more unified when faced with outside aggression. Their history shows that previously warring nations will immediately ally when threatened by a common enemy. She swiped to a new set of images. Furthermore, their technological advancement accelerates dramatically during conflicts. What might take decades in peacetime, they accomplish in years, sometimes months, when under pressure. Elder Tay's expression grew concerned. "You believe they could pose a genuine threat?" "I believe they are unpredictable," Kim replied carefully. "And in 12,000 years of imperial expansion, we have never encountered a species with their particular combination of traits. They value individual thinking and creative problem-solving above conformity. Their military doctrines emphasize adaptability over rigid structure. These qualities make their responses difficult to model accurately." Du snorted. "You speak as if these are strengths, Kim. The Empire has brought order to the galaxy precisely because we eliminate such chaotic tendencies. Unpredictability leads to inefficiency. Creative thinking leads to dangerous ideas." "Nevertheless," Kim persisted, "I recommend caution, a gradual approach, perhaps diplomatic." "Enough!" Du's voice echoed through the chamber. "Your concern is noted, scientist, but the decision has been made." He turned to the Council. "Earth's defiance cannot go unanswered. Their lunar colonies are lightly defended according to our scans. A precise strike there will demonstrate our power without causing planetary damage. They will surrender immediately." The Council members nodded in agreement, all except Elder Tay, who watched Kim with curious eyes. Later, in her private laboratory, Kim sat alone, surrounded by screens showing transmissions intercepted from Earth. She had spent years studying humans, their art, music, literature, and most importantly, their conflicts. She had watched recordings of their global sporting competitions, political debates, and cultural ceremonies. Unlike her colleagues, she had come to admire humans, even as she recognized the threat they posed to imperial stability. The door chimed. Kim quickly switched her displays to standard research data before calling, "Enter." Elder Tay glided into the room on her gravity chair. "You were not forthcoming in the war room, Scientist Kim," Kim stood respectfully. "I said what I could, Elder. But not all that you believe." Tay moved closer, lowering her voice. "I've read your full reports. You believe the humans will not only resist, you believe they might win." Kim hesitated before answering. "I believe the Empire has grown complacent, Elder. We measure advancement by how closely other species follow our technological path. Humans took a different route. Their quantum theories alone are troubling if given time to develop. Do will not give them time," Tay said. "The attack fleet launches within 6 hours. 300 ships against a handful of lunar settlements. He expects surrender transmissions before the day ends." Kim turned away, her decision already made hours ago. Then the Empire has chosen war. After Elder Tay departed, Kim activated a hidden communication system, one she had developed based on human encryption principles. The Empire's security protocols couldn't detect it because it used concepts their systems weren't designed to recognize. She transmitted the complete attack plans to Earth, including shield frequencies, weapons capabilities, and fleet formations. She included a personal message. "Your warning was heard by some of us. Prepare yourselves. The Empire has never known defeat, but they have never faced humans before." Aboard his command ship, Grand Marshal Du watched as the attack fleet assembled. 300 warships, each capable of reducing a city to ash, arranged in the Imperial battle formation that had conquered 1,000 worlds. "Send the message to all ships," he ordered. "Commence attack on the human lunar colonies in exactly 5 hours. Victory to the Empire." The fleet moved forward, their engines glowing against the darkness of space. Du smiled, already imagining how quickly the humans would surrender when they saw their moon bases destroyed. These primitive creatures would soon learn what it meant to defy the Empire. What Du couldn't know was that the lunar colonies were already empty and Earth's defense systems were powering up. What he couldn't imagine was that humans had been preparing for this moment since they first looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. The Empire had chosen war, and humanity was ready to fight. The last transport ship lifted off from the lunar surface, carrying the final group of civilians and scientists from Tranquility Base. Lieutenant Jin watched from the pilot's seat as the dome habitats below grew smaller. Hundreds of people had lived and worked there, mining helium-3 and conducting research. Now the bases stood empty, their lights still glowing to maintain the illusion of occupation. "All personnel accounted for," Jin reported through the secure channel. "ETA to Earth Orbital Station, 43 minutes. In the Global Defense Command Center beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Park nodded at the confirmation. Screens around him displayed the status of every lunar evacuation vessel, all safely away, none detected by the approaching Imperial fleet. "They think they're about to deliver a crushing blow," Park said to General Choi beside him. "Instead, they'll waste firepower on empty buildings." Choi, who had commanded ground forces during the water wars 20 years earlier, studied the tactical display showing the Imperial fleet's approach. "The question is what they'll do when they realize they've hit nothing of value." "They'll come for Earth directly," Park replied, "and that's when we spring the trap." The last decade had transformed Earth's defensive capabilities. When the first alien signals were detected, world leaders had done something unprecedented. They'd united not in fear, but in determination. The old rivalries didn't vanish overnight, but they faded in importance against the possibility of extraterrestrial contact or conflict. Deep beneath the ocean floor, inside mountains, and in orbital platforms disguised as communication satellites, humanity had built its shield. Not a single comprehensive system that could fail at one point, but thousands of interconnected, redundant defense nodes. Each used different technologies, different operating principles, some based on traditional physics, others on the quantum breakthroughs that had enabled faster-than-light travel. "Defense grid status?" Park asked. "All systems green," responded the young officer at the main console. "Quantum entanglement network operating at 100%. Particle beams charged. Gravity distortion fields ready. Drone swarms on standby." The Imperial attack on the moon came exactly as Kim's warning had indicated. From Earth, it looked like silent fireworks, bright flashes across the lunar surface, as Imperial ships bombarded the empty bases with devastating energy weapons. The moon's face, which had remained largely unchanged for billions of years, now sported new craters where human settlements had stood. In the Imperial flagship's command center, Grand Marshal Du watched the assault with satisfaction. "Transmit to the humans. Tell them this is but a taste of Imperial power. Demand their surrender within 1 Earth hour." The response came not as a transmission, but as action. The supposedly primitive defense satellites around Earth suddenly changed. What had appeared to be simple communication relays unfolded into complex weapon platforms. What had seemed to be weather monitoring stations revealed energy shields. "What is this?" Du demanded as his tactical officers scrambled to make sense of the readings. "They have orbital defenses? Why weren't these detected?" Before anyone could answer, Earth launched its first countermeasure. Not a direct attack, but swarms of tiny drones, each no larger than a human hand. Thousands of them, then tens of thousands, erupting from hidden silos on Earth's surface and from concealed bases in asteroid fields. "Debris," scoffed the Imperial weapons officer. "They think space junk will deter us?" Then the swarms activated. Each drone linked with those around it through quantum entanglement, creating a network that couldn't be jammed or disrupted. They surrounded Imperial ships, not attacking directly but generating localized gravity distortions that confused sensors and disrupted targeting systems. "Clear them," Du ordered, his composure cracking for the first time. Imperial gunners fired at the swarms, but for each drone destroyed, 3 more took its place. Frustrated by this unexpected resistance, Du ordered a direct attack on Earth's major cities. "If they want to play games, we'll show them true Imperial power." The main fleet moved toward Earth, pushing through the drone swarms. That's when humanity revealed its primary defense system, particle beam platforms hidden in Earth's orbit. And on the lunar far side, untouched by the Imperial bombardment. They fired simultaneously, their beams perfectly coordinated through the quantum network. The effect was devastating. 27 Imperial ships, including 3 capital vessels, disintegrated as their shields failed against weapons they had never encountered. Not simple energy beams, but directed streams of exotic particles that passed through conventional defenses as if they weren't there. "Impossible!" Du shouted as the tactical display showed his fleet taking damage. "Their technology is centuries behind ours." In the Earth Command Center, Admiral Park watched calmly. "Second wave," he ordered. "Activate the gravity wells." Hidden generators on Earth's surface and throughout the solar system activated, creating localized distortions in space-time. Imperial ships found themselves unable to maneuver properly, their engines fighting against artificial gravity fields that pulled them off course. "They're breaking formation," General Choi noted with satisfaction. "Their coordination is failing." Park nodded. "They rely too much on rigid battle plans. Hit them with the variable defense now while they're confused." Earth's orbital platforms changed their attack pattern, using different weapons, different frequencies, different approaches with each salvo. What worked against one Imperial ship wouldn't work against the next, and the humans never used the same tactic twice. It was warfare by constant innovation, the very approach Imperial doctrine couldn't counter. In her laboratory aboard the Imperial flagship, Kim watched the battle unfold with mixed emotions. She had betrayed her people to warn Earth, yet she felt a strange pride seeing humans defend themselves so effectively. The Empire had grown stagnant, unchanging for thousands of years. Perhaps this shock was necessary. Her door burst open. Security officers entered, weapons drawn. Behind them stood Elder Tay. "Science Officer Kim," Tay said, her voice heavy. "You are charged with high treason against the Empire." The attack plans were transmitted to Earth. They were waiting for us. Kim stood tall. "I did what was necessary. The Empire has forgotten how to learn, how to grow. These humans, they could teach us so much if we approached them as equals rather than subjects." As she was led away, Kim caught a final glimpse of the battle display. The mighty Imperial fleet, undefeated for 12,000 years, was retreating, pulled back into defensive formations, its commanders shocked by the ferocity and ingenuity of Earth's response. On Earth, Admiral Park refused to celebrate despite the victory. "They'll be back," he told his officers. "With a larger fleet better prepared. This was just the first engagement. But we've shown them we're not easy prey," General Choi replied. Park nodded slowly. "Yes, and now we take the fight to them. Contact our new allies. It's time for Phase 2. The war for Earth's freedom, and perhaps for the soul of the galaxy itself, had only just begun. The stolen Imperial shuttle approached Earth under heavy escort, its identification codes marking it as a diplomatic vessel. Inside, 6 beings from 5 different species sat in nervous silence. Their journey had been dangerous, slipping away from Imperial space, avoiding patrols, and making contact with human forces without being destroyed in the process. Science. Officer Kim, now considered the Empire's most notorious traitor in centuries, looked out the viewport as Earth grew larger. 6 months had passed since the first battle. 6 months of growing rebellion across Imperial territories, as news spread of how a single planet had fought the Empire to a standstill. "They're hailing us," said the pilot, a former Imperial navigator from the aquatic Novan species. "Earth defense. Command wants voice confirmation." Kim leaned toward the communication panel. "This is Science Officer Kim of the Galactic Empire, requesting asylum and offering alliance. With me are representatives from the Novan Collective, the Rill Engineers, the Tumo Philosophers, and 2 Imperial military officers who share our belief that the Empire must change." The response came quickly. "Proceed to Orbital Station 7. You will be met by Admiral Park personally." 2 days later, in a secure conference room aboard the station, Kim and the other defectors sat across from Earth's military and political leadership. Admiral Park studied the aliens with interest, each so different physically, yet united in their desire for freedom from Imperial control. "The Empire has ruled for 12,000 years through a simple principle," Kim explained, her translator converting her words for human ears. "Co-assimilation and standardization. Every conquered world must adopt Imperial technology, Imperial social structures, Imperial thought. Innovation is permitted only within strict guidelines. The Empire fears the unpredictable." "And that's why they fear us," Park said. "Because we don't follow their rules." "Precisely. Humans develop technologies the Empire never considered because you approached problems differently, your quantum theories alone." Kim gestured to the Rill engineer beside her, a being with 6 limbs and crystalline skin. "Tell here was nearly executed for proposing research similar to what humans have already accomplished." Tell spoke through his own translator. "Your quantum entanglement communication system is remarkable. The Empire relies on standard subspace transmissions, fast but limited by the laws of physics as they understand them." President Han, who had joined via secure link from Earth, leaned forward. "Are you suggesting their communication network is vulnerable?" "More than vulnerable," Kim replied. "It's their greatest weakness. The Empire maintains control over 8,000 star systems through rigid communication protocols. Every order, every decision flows from the Imperial core outward. Disrupt that network, and the Empire can't coordinate," Park finished the thought. "Their entire command structure would fall apart." The Tumo philosopher, a tall being with 4 eyes and silver skin, spoke for the first time. "For 3,000 years, my people have maintained the Imperial libraries and archives. We have watched countless species lose their cultural identity to Imperial standardization. Many worlds would join your cause if given hope of success. What followed was 3 months of intensive planning. Earth's ships, now augmented with technology provided by the defectors, made contact with resistance movements on dozens of worlds. Small at first, these alliances grew as more and more species learned that Imperial invincibility was a myth. Kim and the other defectors worked closely with Earth scientists, combining their knowledge of Imperial systems with human creativity. Together they developed a weapon unlike any before, not one that destroyed, but one that disrupted the very fabric of Imperial power, its communication network. Meanwhile, Grand Marshal Do had not been idle. The humiliation of the first defeat had been followed by a massive military buildup. The Imperial Council, for the first time in thousands of years, faced criticism from within. Why had they not been better prepared? How could primitive humans possess technology that rivaled Imperial capabilities? Doo's response was to gather the largest fleet in Imperial history, over 10,000 warships drawn from across the Empire, leaving many subjugated worlds with reduced Imperial presence. His plan was simple: overwhelm Earth with such force that resistance would be impossible. What Doo didn't realize was that the reduced presence on those worlds allowed resistance movements to grow stronger. What he couldn't know was that his massive fleet relied on the very communication network Earth was preparing to attack. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Horizon, looking at the tactical display showing the position of every ship in the joint fleet. Earth vessels alongside ships from 24 formerly subjugated species. They had gathered in secret at the edge of Imperial space, preparing for an operation codenamed Whisper. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said his executive officer. Park nodded. "Begin the countdown. Remind all captains this is not a conventional attack. We are not targeting military installations or planets. Our only objectives are the communication relay stations." Throughout the fleet, crews prepared for battle. Unlike Imperial ships with their rigid hierarchies, these vessels operated with the flexibility that was becoming the hallmark of the Alliance. Humans served alongside aliens, each bringing unique perspectives and abilities to their roles. The joint fleet jumped into Imperial space at precisely calculated points, not at major military bases, but at seemingly insignificant relay stations that formed the backbone of the Imperial communication network. Each station was lightly defended, considered too unimportant to warrant major protection. At each location, Alliance ships deployed the quantum disruptors, devices that targeted the specific frequencies used by Imperial communications and introduced cascading errors that couldn't be filtered out, not simply jamming the signals, but corrupting them in ways the Imperial systems couldn't detect until too late. Aboard the Imperial flagship, Grand Marshal Doo was reviewing final plans for the assault on Earth when his tactical display suddenly flickered. Then communications began to fail, first with outlying sectors, then with nearby fleets. "What's happening?" he demanded. "Unknown, Grand Marshal," replied his communications officer. "We're losing contact with sectors 7 through 23. Reports of similar outages from all quadrants. Restore communications immediately." "We're trying, sir, but the disruption is spreading. It's as if the network itself is corrupting from within." Within hours, the carefully structured Imperial command system collapsed into chaos. Ships and bases, unable to receive orders from Central Command, either sat idle or acted on outdated information. The massive fleet Doo had assembled began to fragment as captains, cut off from the chain of command, made individual decisions about how to proceed. On worlds across the Empire, resistance movements seized the moment. Imperial garrisons, unable to call for reinforcements, found themselves facing populations that had planned for this opportunity for months. Admiral Park watched from the horizon as reports flooded in from across Imperial space. "Operation Whisper is exceeding expectations," his communications officer reported. 87% of Imperial communications are now compromised. Their fleet movements have become disorganized. And Grand Marshal Doo's main fleet scattered. "Sir, some ships are returning to their home sectors to deal with uprisings. Others are trying to restore communications. They're no longer a cohesive fighting force." Kim, who had been given an advisory position on Park's staff, looked at the displays with a mix of wonder and sadness. 12,000 years of Imperial rule, undermined not by superior firepower, but by a different way of thinking. Park turned to her. "We didn't want to destroy the Empire, just its ability to dominate others. What comes next will be the true test, building something better." Kim nodded. "The Empire forgot how to change, how to adapt. Humans never stopped learning." She looked out at the stars. "Perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. The turning point had come not through a decisive battle, but through understanding the enemy's fundamental weakness. Earth and its allies had changed the game completely, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Imperial Palace on Centauri Prime had stood for 8,000 years, a massive structure of crystalline towers and gravity-defying arches that housed the central government of the Galactic Empire. For millennia, its great hall had seen the subjugation of species after species. with imperial decrees handed down without question or debate. Today, it witnessed something entirely different. Admiral Park walked slowly down the central aisle of the hall, his Earth defense uniform standing out among the elaborate dress of the various species gathered. Behind him came President Han and the representatives of 27 formerly subjugated worlds. The Imperial Council members watched from their elevated platform, their faces showing a mixture of resentment and resignation. Grand Marshal Du was noticeably absent. He had chosen suicide over surrender when his flagship was finally cornered. 3 months earlier, in his place stood acting Imperial Governor Ryu, who had assumed leadership after the communication network collapse threw the Empire into disarray. "Welcome to Centauri Prime," Governor Ryu said formally. "The Imperial Council has agreed to these negotiations under protest. We maintain that the actions taken against Imperial authority constitute unlawful rebellion." President Han stepped forward. "Your protest is noted, Governor. However, the reality before us cannot be denied. The old empire no longer exists in its previous form. Over 2,000 worlds have declared independence. Your remaining forces are scattered and disorganized. We are not here to gloat or to impose a new empire. We are here to build something better." The negotiations lasted for 7 weeks. Each day brought heated debates and tense moments when it seemed the talks might collapse. The imperial representatives clung to traditions and hierarchies that had defined galactic civilization for 12,000 years. The newly liberated worlds pushed for complete dissolution of all imperial structures. Through it all, Admiral Park and Science Officer Kim worked tirelessly to find middle ground. They had formed an unusual partnership, the human military commander and the imperial scientist who had defected. Their shared vision of a galaxy united not by force, but by mutual benefit, kept the talks moving forward when deadlocks occurred. The Kai Empire brought stability, Kim acknowledged during one particularly difficult session. No one denies this, but stability without growth becomes stagnation. The Empire stopped evolving thousands of years ago. "And you think humans have the answer?" asked Elder Tay, who had survived the conflict and now represented the old imperial interests. "Not the answer," Park replied. "An answer, one possibility among many. That's the point we're trying to make. There isn't one right way to organize a civilization. The strength comes from diversity of approach, from the exchange of ideas." Slowly, a new framework began to take shape. Not an empire, but a confederation, a loose alliance of sovereign worlds that would maintain their own cultures and governments while participating in a galactic council, where major decisions affecting multiple systems would be debated openly. The signing ceremony took place exactly 1 year after Earth had first detected the Imperial fleet near Saturn. In the Great Hall, representatives of 3,000 worlds, including 500 that had remained loyal to the Empire, affixed their signatures or equivalent marks to the Galactic Confederation Charter. The first principle of this confederation, President Han declared, is that no world may impose its will upon another through force. The second is that all species have inherent value and rights that cannot be abridged. The third is that diversity of culture, of thought, of approach strengthens rather than weakens us all. After the ceremony, Admiral Park found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the capital city, its spires glittering in the light of 3 setting suns. Kim joined him there, her silver uniform replaced by the blue robes of a Confederation diplomat. "Do you think it will last?" she asked quietly. Park considered the question. "Nothing lasts forever. But I think this has a better chance than the Empire did. It's designed to change, to adapt. The Empire tried to freeze the galaxy in a single moment of time." "Humans surprised us," Kim admitted. "When the Empire first detected your transmissions, centuries ago, our scientists predicted you would destroy yourselves before achieving space travel. Your history was so full of conflict. We came close many times," Park said. "But we learned. That's what humans do best. We learn from our mistakes. Some in the former Empire still see you as dangerous, unpredictable." Park smiled slightly. "We are. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. The implementation of the Confederation wasn't smooth. On some worlds, Imperial loyalists resisted the new order. Others took independence as license to settle old scores. Earthships, now joined by vessels from dozens of allied species, found themselves serving as peacekeepers, a role Admiral Park had never envisioned when he first took command of Earth's defense fleet. 2 years after the signing, Park returned to Earth for the first time since the peace treaty. The orbital defense platforms remained. Humanity had learned caution, but they were now supplemented by a massive space station where representatives from hundreds of worlds lived and worked. Together, Park's shuttle docked at the station, where he was met by Lieutenant Jin, now promoted to captain of her own vessel. "Welcome back, Admiral," she said with a salute. "Your timing is perfect. The first meeting of the Scientific Exchange is about to begin." The Scientific Exchange had been Park's idea, a gathering of researchers from across the Confederation to share knowledge freely, without the restrictions the Empire had placed on innovation. As he entered the main hall, he was struck by the diversity before him. Hundreds of beings from countless worlds, all talking excitedly, sharing ideas across species boundaries that had been impenetrable under Imperial rule. In the center of the hall stood a holographic projection of the galaxy, with Confederation worlds highlighted in blue. Nearly half the spiral arms now glowed with that color, and the number grew each month as more worlds joined. Park felt a presence beside him and turned to find Elder Tay, her gravity chair hovering quietly. "Impressive, isn't it?" she said, gesturing to the gathering. "I was 400 years old before I first spoke to a non-imperial species as an equal. Now look at this. Ideas flowing freely between worlds that never communicated before." "Change isn't always easy," Park acknowledged, "especially after 12,000 years of doing things one way." "No, not easy," she agreed, "but necessary. The Empire had grown too rigid, too fearful of the new. When you humans sent your warning instead of immediately attacking, some of us recognized what you were offering. Not just resistance, but an alternative path." Across the room, Kim was deep in conversation with a group of Earth scientists. They were examining a prototype device that combined Imperial energy technology with human quantum theory, something that would have been forbidden under the old order. "Your species still concerns me," Tay admitted. "You develop so quickly. You take risks the Empire would never have permitted." "We make mistakes," Park said, "but we correct them, we learn." "Yes," Tay replied thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is what the galaxy needed. Not perfection, but the freedom to learn from imperfection." As evening fell, Park stood at the observation deck of the station, looking down at Earth glowing blue and green below. So much had changed in just 3 years. Humanity, which had been confined to its solar system, now had ships traveling to distant stars. Earth, which had stood alone against the Empire, now stood with thousands of allies. "Admiral," it was President Han joining him at the viewport, "the Confederation Council has approved your proposal. The Exploration Division will launch next month. 500 ships, mixed crews pushing beyond the old Imperial boundaries." Park nodded, watching the stars. "There's so much out there we don't know. So many possibilities." "That's what frightened the Empire," Han said. "Possibility. Change, the unknown. And now," Han smiled, "now we embrace it. Together." The new galactic order wasn't built on conquest or subjugation. It was built on a simple idea that humans had learned through their own troubled history, that strength comes not from enforced uniformity, but from the free exchange of different perspectives. Earth hadn't defeated the Empire through superior firepower, but by introducing a concept so revolutionary that even their enemies eventually embraced it. Diversity is not weakness, but strength. And across the galaxy, worlds that had lived in fear for millennia began to look to the stars, not with dread, but with hope.